lang po.
Thank you.
USB lang.
Okay, our first slide is squamous cell carcinoma of the palate. Now, we have already seen a squamous cell carcinoma of the lungs. Okay? So, same type of histology will be seen in any organ that will develop that type of malignancy. Squamous cell carcinoma. Same morphology, however, different lang ang location. So in this portion of the slide, we are seeing the portion pointed is the regular. One epithelium is pointed. Regular stratified squamous epithelium. Now, you can notice there is maturation pattern that is displayed by the squamous cells. So only the cells at the basal layer possess large nucleus, and then as they ascend to the superficial layer, the nucleus becomes pycnotic till eventually the cell will die. So that there is regular shedding of the squamous cells in a stratified squamous epithelium. This is the portion which shows us the malignant squamous cells. Compare now the characteristics of the nuclei in the malignant portion with the nuclei in the benign portion. So there is maturation pattern here at all layers of this sheet of squamous cells. All cells are displaying large and hyperchromatic nuclei. How do you call that pointed structure amongst the malignant squamous cells? That's a keratin pearl. So that what should be the degree of differentiation of this tumor? It should be well differentiated. When tumor cells still resembles the regular, the benign cells in morphology, or if they are still performing the expected function of the normal cell, the tumor is classified as well differentiated. So normally squamous cells produce keratin, and because these tumor cells produce keratin pearls, this malignancy should be classified as a well-differentiated type of malignancy. So that should be the plasma membrane, the basement membrane of the stratified squamous epithelium. The tumor cells have already infiltrated the deeper tissues. So this is even the ulcerated portion, wherein there is already disruption of the continuity of the stratified squamous epithelium. We will not be able to say for sure that this is from the palate. However, it will be safe to diagnose this in a practical exam as squamous cell carcinoma. Those are mucosecreting glands. Squamous cell carcinoma. Our next slide is pleomorphic adenoma. Okay, we will begin with the normal, about parotid gland. What is the classification of the secretion of the parotid gland? Okay, purely serous. So that the histology will show us only serous acini, and then those are the ducts, intralobular or interlobular ducts. They are amongst the secretory acini. Inter or intra? Intralobular duct. And then, how do you call those pointed cells? Are they abnormal in the salivary glands? Okay, so regular ang presence ng anong cells yun? Adipose cells. Now, the problem with this parotid gland is that a mass which is well circumscribed, that's the fibrous capsule of the mass, is present. So separating the normal salivary gland tissue from the tumor. So that is now the content of the mass. Let us examine the composition of the mass. Okay, that component of the mass is showing us what shape of cells? Spindle-shaped cells. Basically, these cells originate from the connective tissue of the salivary gland. Okay, we are even seeing what type of epithelium is shown. Epithelium here. Is it simple or stratified? Stratified squamous. Now, this portion of the tumor is showing us another type of histology. So we are seeing lumen of glands. If we will zoom in, we will be able to appreciate epithelial cells lining these ductal or tubular structures. Okay? Mayroong spindle-shaped cells coming from the stroma. Mayroong epithelial cells forming glands. And then sometimes, we will be able to see cartilaginous tissues within this tumor. Okay, that area is showing us also aggregates of tubules and ducts. Sometimes there will be plates of hyaline cartilage that will be present in this tumor. And then that is the characteristic connective tissue that is usually present in this tumor of the parotid gland. So that is the histologic appearance of a myxoid stroma. So myxoid stroma is almost similar with a fibrous connective tissue or a dense irregular fibrous connective tissue. However, the dense irregular fibrous connective tissue will be accompanied by mucin material, which is a feature of a myxoid stroma. And because we are seeing different types of cells and tissue composing this tumor, there are many forms of cells, there are many types of cells and tissues present. This tumor is called a pleomorphic adenoma. Is there a possibility for this tumor to degenerate into malignancy? Is there a possibility of this benign tumor to degenerate into malignancy? Anong sinabi ng Robbins? Ano? Okay. Carcinoma X pleomorphic adenoma. So, the most common type of malignancy that will develop in pleomorphic adenoma will come from the epithelial component. Most of the time, it is squamous cell carcinoma. So that, the diagnosis now, if there is a squamous cell carcinoma in a previously benign parotid pleomorphic adenoma, the diagnosis will become squamous cell carcinoma X pleomorphic adenoma. So, however, all tissues, all cells that we have seen are all benign, and they are separated from the regular salivary gland tissue by a dense fibrous capsule. This is a benign tumor, which most of the time, what is the most common location of this tumor? Which among the major salivary gland will this type of tumor develop most of the time? Parotid, submandibular, sublingual, submaxillary. Our next neoplasm is the most common malignancy of the major salivary gland. So, most common malignancy that will develop in the major salivary glands. Let us zoom into that portion of the neoplasm. The cells that we are seeing resemble what type of epithelial cells? Anong type of epithelial cell yan? Columnar, cuboidal, squamous, squamous epithelial cells. And then those are mitotic figures, indicating that these cells are multiplying at a very fast rate. And then how will you describe the nuclei that we are seeing? Are they uniform in size and shape? No. So what is the term for that characteristic? There is pleomorphism displayed by the cells that we are seeing. So that is one type of cell that is present in this neoplasm. And then in this portion of the tumor, we are able to see glands. Okay? Meron kong mga lumen. And then contained within the lumen is mucous material. Okay? And then if we will examine the cells lining the glands, we will be able to appreciate mucin vacuoles in their cytoplasm. So aside from the squamous epithelial cells, we are also seeing mucus secreting cells. So that's the name of this neoplasm, mucoepidermoid carcinoma. And then evidence of malignancy, aside from the nuclear features that we have already mentioned, is the infiltrative characteristic, the infiltrations that are already present in the adjacent connective tissue. Ayan. So, mucoepidermoid carcinoma, the most common type of malignant neoplasm that will develop in the major salivary gland. So, kung siya ang most common type of malignant neoplasm to occur in the major salivary glands, this next malignant tumor, is the most common type of malignancy that will develop in the minor salivary glands. What is that type? Have you finished head and neck already in the lecture? Kamusta? What is the most common type of malignancy that will develop in the minor
Adenoid cystic.
salivary,
Adenoid
Okay,
cystic.
very good. The adenoid cystic carcinoma. Now, unfortunately, this slide, the stain is already very faint. However, on scanning objective view, there is a distinct pathology that is displayed by adenoid cystic carcinoma. So, if you can notice, there are lobules, okay, present in this tumor. And then, if we will zoom in to the lobules, okay, that is one lobule, we will be able to see, okay, numerous holes or lumen. Okay? So, kung tingnan nyo yan, para siyang sieve. Salaan ba? Enter. So then this is the characteristic pattern of arrangement that will be displayed by the tumor cells in adenoid cystic carcinoma. And then if you will examine the tumor cells, they are almost uniform in size and in shape. They are cuboidal in shape. Unfortunately, as mentioned a while ago, the stain is already very faint. So we will not be able to appreciate anymore the actual morphology. However, okay, very distinct ang histology ng adenoid cystic carcinoma. Parang C. Okay, so lobules with multiple holes containing mucin-like materials. Adenoid cystic carcinoma, most common type of malignancy that will develop in the minor salivary glands. Our next neoplasm is Warthin's tumor. Is it a benign or a malignant neoplasm? Benign. So, what is the predisposing condition for the development of this tumor? Most often, this neoplasm will develop amongst, very good, smokers. And then, what is the most common major salivary gland affected by this neoplasm? Party. So, yun ang tandaan ninyo. Most common. Now, this neoplasm has two components. So, one component will be the lymphocytes. So, the areas pointed are actually occupied by lymphocytes. Sometimes, the lymphocytes will be forming that structure. How do you call that structure? Histology. How do you call the central pale portion? Germinal center. And then, collectively, the entire thing is called a lymphoid follicle or lymphoid nodule. Okay? So that is one component of this neoplasm. And then the other component is the epithelial cell component. How does Robbins describe these epithelial cells?
2 layers. Dalawa.
How many layers of cells are present?
2 layers na.
Okay, so there are 2 layers of cells. We are seeing 2 layers of nuclei. And then how is the cytoplasm described? Eosinophilic. So those are the characteristic features of the epithelial components of this neoplasm. So columnar epithelial cells in 2 layers, and then their cytoplasm is eosinophilic. And then within the tumor also, we are able to see small cystic spaces. There are cystic spaces, and then the lymphoid and epithelial components sometimes form finger-like projections. Ayan, nakamaganda. Finger-like projection. So that the old name of this tumor is actually papillary. Okay, papillary cyst adenoma lymphomatosum. Papillary because of the presence of the papillae. Papillary cyst adenoma because of the cystic structures present, and then lymphomatosum, referring to the lymphocytes. So remember the predisposing factor, the common locations, and then the histologic features that we have discussed. And then our last slide for the head and neck portion is chronic sialadenitis. Okay, we will again begin with the normal histology of the parotid gland. So how do you call those pointed structures? This is the normal histology of the parotid gland. How do you call the structures pointed? Ano? Acini. And then this one group of acini is called? Anong tawag dyan? Last year pa kasi yung histology. Lobule. And because that duct is inside the lobule, it should be called an intra or an interlobular duct? Intralobular duct. Okay. The problem of this salivary gland is that it is infiltrated by those cells. Okay. Yan yung nag-infiltrate sa kanya. Are those cells epithelial cells? They are? They are actually lymphocytes. Large nucleus, very scant cytoplasm. Okay. Now there are areas showing us the effacement of the regular salivary gland histology due to the infiltration of the lymphocytes. Okay? Sometimes, a metaplastic process will develop secondary to the chronicity of the process. How will you call that pointed epithelium? Simple or stratified? Stratified. And then how about the shape of the cells? Stratified? Squamous. So is a stratified squamous epithelium normally present in the salivary glands? No. So the ducts will be lined by columnar to cuboidal cells. Yan, nag-undergo na metaplasia. What is metaplasia, by the way? Change from? Okay, one mature cell type to another mature cell type. And then, because the infiltrates are lymphocytes, the inflammation that will develop is chronic or acute? Chronic. That is another feature of chronic inflammation. How do you call that?
Fibrosis.
Ano? Fibrosis. So we are seeing here the histologic features of chronic inflammation. Mononuclear infiltrates, and then evidence of repair, which is fibrosis. What syndrome will most of the time develop chronic sialadenitis? What is the nature of that condition? Is it secondary to an infection? What will cause the infiltration of the lymphocytes to the salivary glands in Sjogren's syndrome? Wala, kung nag-lecture niyan, last semester pa kasi yan.
Autoimmune ba?
This is actually an autoimmune disease. Okay, chronic sialadenitis. So that's it for this slide discussion. Tomorrow we will proceed to the gastroenterology.